The city of Warsaw, or the capital of Poland, is a city of 1.3 million people. Before World War II, Warsaw was a major center of Jewish life and culture in Poland. The population of Jewish people in Warsaw before the war was 350,000, which makes up 30% of the population in the city. The Jewish community in Warsaw was the second largest in the world after New York City. Germany invaded Poland on September 1st, 1939, where Poland suffered heavy air and artillery attacks. German troops entered Warsaw on September 29, 1939. On November 23, 1939, German authorities required the Jewish people in Warsaw to wear white armbands with the blue Star of David. They closed Jewish schools, confiscated the property of Jewish people, and forced Jewish men into hard labor. On October 12, 1940, the Germans decreed the establishment of a ghetto in Warsaw. All Jewish residents were forced into one designated area, which Germans sealed off from the rest of the city in November of 1940.
In this photograph, we see Jews riding in rickshaws, which was a very unique method of transportation that was used by the Jews in the ghetto because cars and vehicles were banned. This was the way they had to deal with their restricted reality. But what we don't see in the photo speaks volumes about the life that they were forced to build. Encircled by walls, the Jews were cut off from food supplies. They had their businesses taken away. They were completely dependent on the Germans for their rations, and those were completely insufficient. They were forced into a reality where they had to smuggle.
The traffic of rickshaws, the Warsaw Ghetto's distinctive means of transport, which the Jews have taken over from the Japanese and the Chinese, they couldn't even dream about fixing up the rickshaws the way the Jews have done. Under the seat, there is an empty space where several sacks of flour can be squeezed, and the driver sits on top, feigning innocence. I'm just taking a ride down the street.
Illegal smuggling brought in fully 80% of the food that was consumed by the Jews in the ghetto. There were big organized smugglers who quickly became very rich, and they became the ghetto's elite. And there were other types of smugglers. These were usually very small children who smuggled food into the ghettos just to keep their families alive. This type of smuggling really turned family life on its head because it went against the normal fabric of the family and of society. Smuggling was also very, very dangerous. Anyone who was caught outside the ghetto smuggling was immediately and unceremoniously shot. This, of course, created an awful dilemma for parents who allowed their children to smuggle because they never knew whether their children would return.
Life in the ghettos was usually unbearable. Overcrowding was common. One apartment might have several families living in it. Plumbing broke down and human waste was thrown in the streets along with garbage. Contagious diseases spread rapidly in such cramped, unsanitary housing. People were always hungry. Germans deliberately tried to starve residents by allowing them to purchase only a small amount of bread, potatoes, and fat. Some residents had some money or valuables that they could trade for food smuggled into the ghetto. Others were forced to beg or steal to survive. During the long winters, heating fuel was scarce, and many people lacked adequate clothing. People weakened by hunger and exposure to the cold became easy victims of disease. Tens of thousands died in the ghettos from illness, starvation, or cold. Some individuals killed themselves to escape the hopelessness. The German authorities did everything to seal off the ghetto and not allow in a single gram of food. A wall was put up around the ghetto on all sides that did not leave a single millimeter of open space. They fixed barbed wire and broken glass to the top of the wall. When that failed to help, the wall was built higher. Heinrich Himmler ordered that trains deport everyone in the Warsaw Ghetto to Treblinka to be sent to their death. Between July and September of 1942, German soldiers and police units, supported by non-German auxiliaries, deported approximately 300,000 Jews to the Warsaw Ghetto, to the Treblinka II extermination camp. German SS and police personnel used violence to force Jews to march from their homes or places of work to the concentration camps, and force them to board freight cars bound for the extermination camp. Within the first 7 weeks of Himmler's order, more than 250,000 Jews were taken to Treblinka by rail and gassed to death, marking the largest single act of destruction of any population group, Jewish or non-Jewish, civilian or military, in the war. Although there were small-scale resistance movements that went on throughout the Warsaw Ghetto's history, the most notable was the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. In the summer of 1942, about 300,000 Jews were deported from Warsaw to Treblinka. When reports of mass murder got back to the Warsaw Ghetto, a surviving group of mostly young people formed an organization called the ZOB, which means Jewish Fighting Organization in English. The ZOB issued a proclamation calling for the Jewish people to resist going to the railroad cars. In January 1943, Warsaw Ghetto fighters fired upon German troops as they tried to round up another group of ghetto inhabitants for deportation. Fighters used a small supply of weapons that had been smuggled into the ghetto. After a few days, the troops retreated. This small victory inspired the ghetto fighters to prepare for future resistance. On April 19, 1943, the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising began after German troops and police entered the ghetto to deport the remaining survivors. 750 fighters fought the heavily armed and well-trained Germans. The ghetto fighters were able to hold out for nearly a month, but on May 16, 1943, the revolt ended. The Germans had slowly crushed the resistance. Of the more than 56,000 Jews captured, about 7,000 were shot and the remainder were deported to camps. Warsaw, or the capital of Poland, faced almost near destruction through the Holocaust and World War II. However, today the city has been restored to its pre-war appearance. There are many museums and cultural artifacts that serve as a reminder of the sometimes unpleasant history of the city. However, even though the city has been through physical and emotional destruction, it has been restored and now serves as a reminder that even through terrible times, we can take what has happened to us and help us grow and thrive because of it.